You're listening to Holy Health, the podcast that brings you the latest in health ideas and technology across the spectrum of fields. While ultimately our fate is up to God, how we get there is determined by us. As it says in Kohelet, there is nothing new under the sun. We get that everything can be found in Torah. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge that may help you make better lifestyle choices. This podcast has been brought to you by Musach Haguf Physical Therapy and Personal Training Studio. Our motto is fixing the past in order to build the future. You can find us on Instagram at Musach Haguf. Hey everyone. So it's been a long time. Since October 7th of 2023, maybe I've put out somewhere between, I would say, 3 and 5 episodes. We were going really strong up until October 7th of 2023. And then we've been very patchy since then, though I did continue to record a variety of very interesting topics with many people. I was just feeling unmotivated, not unmotivated in terms of health, but unmotivated in terms of forcing myself to get this podcast out. My son is in and out of the Army. I have a daughter in the Army now as well. And every day just waking up, seeing the news, it was really hard to get that motivation to drive forward. But I've actually looked into, listened to, and found out a lot more about podcasting over the past year. And I decided that what I'm trying to accomplish in this podcast is something that I really don't see within the Jewish or the observant world at all. There are so many health podcasts out there. Many of them are really, really fantastic. But I've not seen any podcast that does what I'm trying to do here, which is combine health and new ways, or maybe old ways, of actually looking at how we can maintain our health with how the Torah says that we should keep our health. And I've got about 7 or 8 episodes that are in my files, and I've started turning to a lot of new people to help me put out some of these Torah extras. Every person who comes on to do a Torah extra just approaches it from a different way. They make it their own. And that's one of the things that makes it so interesting. But I felt like if I'm going to come back on now, that maybe I should backtrack a little, back up, rediscuss why it was that I wanted to do this podcast in the first place, just sort of reiterate that. And then at the end, I'm going to bring on my friend Nomi, who's going to give us just a little bit of information about how the Torah says we should take care of our health. And then we'll move forward from there. I'll give you guys a little bit of information about some of the upcoming episodes that we're going to be having, along with some other people who I've reached out to try to book a time to interview them. So, going back, it was really way before even the pandemic that I wanted to start this podcast. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted it to have something to do with health and something to do with Torah. That's why I was going to call it Holy Health. But it was really after sort of watching the way people viewed the pandemic. And I'm not faulting anyone for anything they did, because I don't tell anybody what to do. I like people to understand their choices, understand that there are always choices, and then make their own decision. Even if somebody comes to me, let's say somebody comes to me with an ACL tear, and they're trying to decide, should they do surgery or should they not do surgery? I'll discuss the pros and cons of each with them. But ultimately, no matter what I think, I will never tell somebody what to do, because I don't ever want somebody turning around and regretting their decision, right? I don't think anybody should ever regret what they've done. I think that everything in the world happens for a reason, and everything we go through sort of leads us to the next path, the next thing that we're going to do in life. And I think that everything, hakol tova, like everything we do happens the way it's supposed to. But not everybody thinks that way, and I don't ever want to make somebody's decision for them. But what I saw happen over the pandemic was that people could not hear anyone else. They could only listen to what the news was telling them. They could only listen to what their specific doctor was telling them. And I mean, it's not a secret that I was personally, against the COVID vaccine, as was my father, who's been a doctor for many years. You can go back and listen to episode number 2, where I interviewed my parents to talk about how I got my interest in health in the first place. And, my father was a doctor with 50 years of experience already. And again, it's not that everybody had to agree with him,
But it was here they were trying to force something onto people, something that we had no record of. We had no idea whether it was going to work. We had no idea what the lasting effects were going to be. And everybody just kind of said that anybody who said that you don't have to take it, they're a quack. Didn't make a difference if it was a doctor with, 50 years of experience who graduated from Harvard and had awards from all these other things. It didn't make a difference. Like every doctor who tried to speak out against it was, tried to bring down. Why? Well, I'm not going to go there because that gets into a lot of really crazy stuff. And I try not to go down rabbit holes of things that I know I have no control over. But I will just say, I think it's been pretty clear by now. I can't tell you guys the number of people I know with breast cancer scares, autoimmune diseases, heart issues. And I'm talking about people who are really young and really healthy that maybe someday, maybe there's a family history of heart issues, but with the way they exercise, the way they look after their diet and the age they're at, they shouldn't have heart issues. And I know way too many people like this. So again, I'm not going to get stuck like we are now past this, but my whole point is that I wanted people to understand that we have a choice. And, just because you have a healthy immune system, it doesn't mean that you won't get sick. The difference is if you have a really healthy immune system, your body is going to be able to fight that sickness. And there are many, many ways that you can look after and take care of your immune system. And so I think we're over about 80 episodes already. I interviewed a variety of different people and sort of across the board, some of the things that we've really seen and learned are that when your body has too much inflammation in it, that is going to create problems. And it's fascinating. To me, it's always been fascinating that people can have a stabilizing system that doesn't work well. For some people, they'll have back pain. Some people will have pelvic floor problems. Some people will just keep blowing hernia after hernia after hernia. Other people will just have pain in multiple areas of their body. Like everybody can have, or all of these people can have a stabilizing system that isn't working well, but yet what they're feeling will come out differently in every person. And the same thing goes with too much inflammation in the body. When there's too much inflammation in your body, one person may end up with diabetes, one person may end up with an autoimmune disease, one person just might end up with, I don't know, psoriasis or something like that. But too much inflammation causes a problem in the body. Too much inflammation can cause mental health problems. Too much inflammation can be a cause of Alzheimer's. Too much inflammation can be a cause of infertility. There are so many things, and that's sort of across the board. Something that we've learned is that inflammation, while it is a buzzword, is also the cause of so many things that we see around us in the world today. Do you guys want to hear something really interesting? I've got a really good friend. She'll know when I'm talking about her when she hears this. But it's fascinating because she told me a few weeks ago that she did all of these blood tests because she thought maybe she had diabetes or something like that. And it turns out she's got high cholesterol. So the doctor told her, stop eating red meat and stop, drinking high fat milk. Okay, this person has been a vegetarian as long as I've known her, which is since about I don't know, since about where the time we're 10. I don't actually know when she became vegetarian, but she's vegetarian. So she does not eat red meat and she doesn't eat high fat anything. In fact, she mostly eats things that are fat free. So clearly, people in the world today will still tell you that eating too much fat is what causes high cholesterol. It's not. Inflammation, too many carbohydrates, too much sugar. Those are the things that actually trigger inflammation in the body, will trigger high cholesterol, will trigger heart problems. Anybody who wants to can go back to and listen to the episode that I put out a few months ago with Dr. Ovadia. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon who's also a carnivore. And he can talk, you can hear him talk about all the weight he's lost and how much he's lowered the inflammation in his body eating only meat. And I'm not suggesting that people eat only meat. And another thing, I know I bring a lot of new information in these episodes every week, and sometimes that can feel overwhelming as well. I've had many people contact me and say, I don't know what to do. Like, how can I do all of these things? And the end of the day, you're right. You can't do everything, but you want to open your mind to hearing things and then seeing which of these things resonate with you, which of these things speak to you. And you want to start, and you're going to hear Nomi talk about this as well. with one thing. Don't try to start with everything. If you make one little change, you will see that it will be easier to make that next change. And you don't have to make all of these changes at once. You want to do what you can to start making a change. Everybody in life has their challenges. Everybody, and not everybody knows. Sometimes it looks like we all know this, right? That somebody looks perfect and amazing, and everybody's got their own challenges. For me, I've struggled with my weight my entire life. Even now, here I am doing this health podcast. I'm not skinny. I'm probably never going to be skinny. In fact, a few weeks ago, after months of not wanting to get on a scale, I got on a scale and got the shock of my life because I'd gained 7 kilo, which is close to 15 pounds over the past year and a half. And it freaked me out because guess what? I eat pretty well. I don't sit around eating donuts and cake all day long. I really don't. Like, I mostly take my own advice. And then Shabbat, I kind of ate whatever I wanted. But I realized, like, for me, this has always been something that's really hard for me. And I have to get my own self into my own hands. And I realized that, I'm like someone who I do love sugar. I don't eat it every day, all day long. I don't. Like, most days of the week, I don't eat it. But maybe for me, I'm someone who really can't eat it at all because it doesn't do good things for me. Everybody has their own challenges and everybody can only do the best that they can. And we can't take on too many things at once. And we have to take on, the little things, start with the little things, and then everything will get easier and easier. So I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about some upcoming episodes that might interest you. I believe the first one coming out next week, it's on functional fertility. Believe it or not, there is a lot that you can do. Like the tagline of our show, God decides when you go, you decide how you get there. The same thing with fertility. Ultimately, you could try to do everything right, and it's still up to God what's going to happen. But there are so many things that you can do that are within your control that, believe it or not, can help your fertility. There's an episode, I'm going to call it some type of sexual health on Tantra Nova, which is learning the secrets to lasting intimacy with an incredibly interesting couple. Their story is fascinating. There is going to be an issue on the use of ketamine and psychedelic drugs in treating PTSD and OCD and other type of mental health disorders. There's going to be an episode on the use of blood flow restriction training, which is a really, really interesting topic. It's a machine that I'm considering getting for my office myself. It's something that can be very, very useful for a variety of reasons, but after surgery, it can be really helpful as well. There's going to be an episode on the use of stem cell therapy, not just for healing, but also for anti-aging, which is something that's really interesting. And one of the episodes that I actually would like to do is on non-surgical, non-poisonous, not dangerous interventions into anti-aging in terms of regenerative things for your skin that can be done without shooting poison into your face and things like that. So that's actually something in the works. That's not in the bag yet. That's something I'm working on. There are a variety of different things that I've learned about. But these are some of the episodes. There's more. Those are just kind of the ones I can think of off the top of my head. And another one is using a certain type of biofeedback in the treatment of ADHD. And I already know the person who's doing the extra for this is herself an expert in ADHD, an expert in Torah, and she's going to combine the two of them for us as well. She's written a book. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. It'll be coming out in the next few weeks. And one of the reasons that I've decided to start reaching out to some new Torah experts is that, like I said at the beginning of the show, I would like this podcast to grow. Over the past few months, over the past year, I've learned of a number of Jewish podcasts that I didn't really know about. And when I went and I looked at them, even on YouTube alone, some of them had 25,000 views, and that was only on YouTube. That's not including, like, for this particular show, not so many people have typically been listening to this on YouTube. It's mainly people are listening on Spotify and Apple and things like that. So that's only giving you a little piece. So I feel like if some of these other shows can get 25,000 listeners, I think we could get 10, 12,000, 15,000 listeners a week. Easy. I think that this is something that's missing from our community, this bridge between maybe these latest and greatest techniques and where do they fit into Torah? Like, how much do we really need to be doing? And again, As I said earlier, it's impossible to do everything, but there are so many things that are within our control. And if you take baby steps, and certain people have healthier immune systems, and certain people have, their bodies are better at detoxing. I can tell you guys something interesting is that, I used to be really embarrassed, like when I was in my 20s and we would go out at dancing because I would start to sweat like before I barely took a step, I'd be sweating already. And it was really embarrassing, right? And there are a lot of people around who you probably know who don't sweat at all. Well, guess what? Sweating is a really good way of your body detoxing. That's kind of what happens when you go into a sauna. Your body starts to sweat and you start to sweat out toxins and things like that. So if you're someone who sweats a lot, it's actually a good thing. Like your body may be more adept, at least in that way, at releasing toxins. And when people have too many toxins building up in their body, that will increase, the body will be toxically overloaded, but that will increase inflammation in the body as well. And that circles back to what we were talking about earlier. So again, one of the reasons I am reaching out to some new Torah experts as well is because I do want the show to grow. I want it to get out. I want it to be heard by anybody who would be interested. So again, I'm going to ask you guys to please help me if this show, not necessarily today's episode, but any of the other, 80 previous episodes or things that have interested in you, please, please share it on any of your social media platforms, on your, WhatsApp status, in your groups, however you can help get the message out. I'd really appreciate it. If you're on Instagram, feel free to follow me. I've changed my name from Musach Haguf, which was my business name, which means like the Body Garage, actually to Dara PT613. I do a lot of different things on there. I talk a lot about Israel, but I also give a lot of tips in terms of physical therapy and things like that as well. And if you could just share this, if you could follow us on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, any of them, all of them, rate the show, leave a comment. And as always, feel free to reach out to me. And with that, I want to talk to you guys about a product that I have discovered over the past few months that I really, really love. It's called Dr. Shtaygen, and it is actually created as a stender for holding one of a sefer, like a big sefer, right? But why does this interest me? Because when I looked at what this was meant to do and how it was built, what this particular stender does is that it extends both up and down and it tilts front to back. So what it does is it allow you to adjust your book or your tablet or your phone or whatever you want to a height that allows you to keep your head and neck in alignment. If you think back to the episode that I did on breathing, and I'm constantly talking about breathing and how important that is, I have got to start with my head and neck in alignment so that my diaphragm sits on top of my pelvic floor so that I can properly create and maintain intra-abdominal pressure. And this particular device, whether you use it, learning in yeshiva, whether you want to use it to hold your cookbook, will actually keep your head and neck in alignment, allowing you to experience less neck pain, less back pain. It's really, really a great product. And I'm going to be linking that product here in the show notes as well. I suggest you guys check it out. Dr. Shtaygen. I think there might even be some YouTube videos and things. And with that, I'm going to cut for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the simple little episode, easing us back into what Holy Health is all about. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Shabbat. And we should just wake up every day to only good news. Bezrat Hashem. Our Chayalim should come home safely, and our hostages should come home safe and sound as well. Shabbat Shalom. Hey everyone, I am so excited to have with me today my good friend Nomi Levy. Nomi and I have been friends for, I don't know, God, a lot of years.
Many years.
Yeah, many years. We met officially on a sand dune in the middle of the desert in Beersheba. When she came running up to me, she's like, I know you. And I had taught like a class she had done at the YMCA. And honestly, how old is your youngest?
He's 11.
So it's 10 years ago at least, because he was the baby in a He was in a cell, like he was a baby in a
Yeah.
basket.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. And I know when Nomi first started her journey as a nutritionist, I kept telling her, yes, yes, you can do this. You should do it. You'll be great at it. And today she has a master's in clinical nutrition. Am I right about that? Did I get
Yep.
that right? And she's studying for her PhD now as well.
In
So
clinical nutrition.
in clinical nutrition. So she is a knowledgeable, like a completely knowledgeable person about everything health. But she also had a really interesting journey, which I'm sure she doesn't mind my talking about, in that Nomi's a convert. I mean, you could see, look at that beautiful face and that beautiful skin, anybody watching, and you can see that there's some heritage possibly coming from somewhere else. So she's had a really interesting journey as well. And I know for a while she'd taught in a bunch of different seminaries, and I know that she did teach about health there as well. So I felt like she would be a great person just to come on to this first episode after such a long hiatus and kind of just give us a little bit of the Torah perspective on health.
Thank you so much, Tara, for inviting me. And health is something I love. Torah is something I love. So I love that I get to merge them. Um, so there's so many different directions to go with this because, we know so much when we think about health in the Torah. Often we think about what the Rambam says because I think he's one of the most, um, there's so many different books that he wrote, his treatise on asthma, hemorrhoids, so many different, many, many different books that the Rambam wrote. But of course, the Rambam is all basing this on Torah. So if we go all the way back, health is actually mentioned in the Torah a number of times. And obviously, that's not surprising because the Torah is our guidebook for life, spiritually and physically, and everything is in there. And so I went and looked a little bit at the sources, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Nobody's listening to my Hebrew reading today. Okay. um, but two of the sort of the pasukim that jumps out of me in Devarim, where it says, "Take utmost care and watch your nefesh scrupulously," and then a few pasukim later, it says, "Be extremely protective of your lives." So the Rambam writes about this idea that take utmost care and watch your nefesh scrupulously, and this is actually where we get the mitzvah of pikuach nefesh. This is where we get the directive to, it's even okay to violate Shabbos in order to save somebody's life. It comes from this pasuk. But the Rambam quotes this pasuk in his book Hilchot Ratzeach in chapters 11 and 12, and he gives directions of the things that we should not do because they're risky to our body or health. So we get a lot of things that we should not do, things that are just dangerous. And then we go on and we look a few centuries later, this conversation on health continues, and Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch writes in his book, Horeb, do not ruin yourself, do not weaken yourself, and preserve yourself. And so when I was reading these few different things, it sounded like there was a lot of stuff we shouldn't be doing. And it had almost kind of like a negative. And I always say we have to define ourselves by what we are doing, not by what we aren't doing. And so I kind of thought, well, where are we supposed to take all of this? Like, what are some of the things that we can actually do? So we know the things that we're not supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be ruining ourselves. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, he doesn't, but another later source actually talks about smoking could be something that could be ruining yourself. But then I thought, well, let's think of things that we should be doing. Because I think most of us know what we're not supposed to be doing. When the Rambam talks about it, he talks about not drinking water that's been left out overnight, not putting coins in one's mouth in case that there's diseases that have been left on from hands that have touched them. But let's talk about things that we can proactively do. So I think that when we're thinking about our health, we're not just thinking about what we're eating or how much we're exercising. We're really thinking of the foundation of our health is this good spiritual being. And that's really where the Torah is kind of saying, protect your nefesh. It's not just your nefesh, it's also your nefesh is where your neshama lives. And so how can we make sure that we're doing things that really protect all parts of ourselves holistically? And the first thing that I thought of when I said, I always want to give, I do tip of the day on Instagram. My goal is always to give things that people can take away and do today. That even if they weren't doing, it's one thing that they can take away and be a little bit inspired on. So some of the things that I thought of, the first thing I said, you know what? Before we even talk about exercise and how many hours you should sleep and what foods you should be eating. Work on guarding your energy, especially in this time, having lived in a country that's been at war for over a year, waking up every morning to bad news, reading through the WhatsApp groups. Is everything okay with everybody's kids who are stationed up north or down south? I think it's really important that we take proactive control and guard our energy. And while we have to be involved in our community efforts, we also have to make sure that we're not getting unnecessary infiltration, reading unnecessary news, because I think that can really bring us down. And to a certain level, that can weaken the nefesh. That physiology really is influenced by our psychological state. The other thing I was thinking is it's really important always to have a really good routine. And we have to habitize our lives, but it's not going to happen tomorrow where we can just magically snap our fingers and put everything together. But we can make sure that we're doing small, consistent things. And sometimes I tell people, like, the smallest thing is just waking up and making sure that you drink a glass of water first thing in the morning. Those little things add up. And, when we look at what the Rambam was saying, the things that the Rambam was recommending us not to do, they're also small things, right? Like not to drink from a covered glass of water, an uncovered glass of water is a small thing. But the truth is that those small things affect our health in the negative, and also the small things affect our health in the positive. So think of a small thing that you can take on that would be good for you, because those things really add up and they can benefit our health.
And I actually remember like years ago, like maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, a book came out called like the Rambam Diet or something like that.
Yeah,
And it
I
was,
actually had that book.
yeah, it was such practical advice because a lot
Yeah.
of what he was talking about was, I knew do the same as you. I tell people the exact same thing. Don't try to do everything all at once. Like if you're going to try to change 20 things, you're not going to be successful. I can't give a patient that comes into me 20 exercises the first day. They're going to do nothing. Like you have to give them little things, let their body make little changes. And then the next time it could be a little more and a little more until a little more. And then before they know it, they're doing so much exercise. Like I love getting people that have never exercised before. Those are my favorite because you actually build them. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm exercising. I've never been able to sustain this. I've never been able to do it. But when you give people things in little amounts, exactly what you're saying, it just ends up adding up. And it just makes so much sense. And I remember reading that in this Rambam diet book. First off, I was shocked because I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, everything he was saying centuries ago is as if it's like
so
new
relevant.
news, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, you should eat like salmon, you know what I mean? Like a couple times a week and make sure you're getting enough, sunlight. And I'm like, okay, my gosh, like he was talking about the centuries ago. And today it's as if like this is new news. But also one of those things was he talked about making one change a week and then add on and add on and add on. And it just made so much sense. So
I'm a big proponent of that. I think I think where people kind of get taken away is that dopamine hits from motivation and clean, fresh starts, big old makeovers feel amazing. Motivation is a fickle friend. It is not going to stick around for a long time. And so we really have to make sure that we have that discipline. And discipline really only comes when we practice the small things. Discipline does not come from taking huge leaps. It comes when we actually train ourselves on that micro level. It expands from there.
that makes a lot of sense. That absolutely makes a lot of sense. So really, thank you so much. Nomi is actually in the middle of doing carpool. So she's sitting, that's why she's sitting
Can you
in her
tell
car,
there's a person with their blinker on in front of me?
which is why, but I appreciate it because I said, do I really, really want to do it this week?
This
And
is
when,
my lighting.
right. And when Nomi tells me, when I'm like, could we do it one night? She's like, okay, but night is like 5 o'clock for me. I'm like, okay, I'm not even done at work at 5 o'clock. But so she was willing to do this today, driving soccer carpool. And I really appreciate
one
it.
night I stay up late.
Right. Exactly. Wait, what's late for you?
This is my late night, 7 p.m.
Okay, right.
Oh, I'm going home. I tell my kids I'm going right now. Soccer ends 7:40. I'll be back home by 8. I will be in bed at 8:15.
Okay, wow. So I did get in bed at 8 o'clock last night, but usually I'm more like a 10 p.m.
Oh my gosh, it's the best feeling ever.
So
It's the magic everybody's missing in their lives is early bedtime. Magic.
it's true. That could be somebody's first start, first habit. Everyone takes on whatever the thing is, I guess, that is the most meaningful to them. So anyways,
most meaningful, excited, or even easiest, I say.
That's
Sometimes
good.
people are like, no, it's not hard enough. It's like, no, life is too hard. Take on an easy thing. The easiest thing for you. It's that glass of water. Start with that.
Exactly. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, Nomi, thank you so, so much. And we'll be hearing more from Nomi in the future as well.
Love hanging out with you.
I love hanging
Thanks,
out with you
Sarah.
as well. Thanks so much, Nomi. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and any of our guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Joker Productions for editing this podcast.